Hey, shout out to Mitchell. I believe you won World's Strongest Man. I know you won the Arnold. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really too pleased when you beat some of my dudes because I didn't know who you were. But I definitely respect you, and I like you. So you earned my respect. Um, that was just kind of a knee-jerk reaction initially. I think it's normal just when you kind of have your favorite athlete and then a new person comes on the scene. I don't know why, but this video of yours came up, and I literally just turned off my Twitch stream to respond to this because, um, I mean, you know about Louis Cyr and the other guys from back in the day that there's a good handful of guys that there wouldn't be strongmen without them, just like there wouldn't be. They were what Bruce Lee is to fighting in MMA, even boxing. There's not a single fighter in the world that doesn't have utmost respect and reverence for Bruce Lee. And if they don't, I don't know what type of crack they're smoking. Here, let me go on this. I want to hit subscribe. Okay, got it. You got a friend in me, Mitchell. I never known a Mitchell, so now we're buddies. You'll never talk to me, but that's okay. Um, yeah, Xavier, exactly. I didn't read the comments till just now. Yeah, I don't know how you say his name, but that guy's really strong. Um, whoever did this for Brian at top 10 is they don't know, they know nothing. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Um, but there's some key things in here that you mentioned, and you put respect on everybody, which lets me know that you're not delusional, that you don't play favorites, you're not biased. Which, if you were, I would not respect you at all, but you're not, so you got my respect because I'm literal and I'm a realist. And, like you said, the numbers are the numbers. Um, and if we're just to make the point that, let's say that we're all trying to lift this rock to marry the prettiest woman in Ireland. I don't know. There's probably a lot of rocks in Ireland. There ain't that many big rocks in America. Not like what they got over there anyway, usually. Well, at least not historic ones. That's just not like an American tradition. But like what Hafthor has and other places, the the Dumbly stones, Dum, the Dunbar. I can't remember the one. You might have mentioned them on here. I can't remember the names of them. But Brian walked the verges with them and he broke the record. Those types of things. Those are historical, factual things that are passed down from generation to generation. And like they said in World's Strongest Man, the reality show with Brian, Nick, Eddie, and almost said Hafthor, Robert. The Denny Stones. There we go. Thank you, Lord. The Denny Stones. Um, they used to. The king would pick his king's guard based off of strongest men. Period, which makes perfect sense. Uh, so if the king's trying to decide that, that's based off of your strength, and either you're the strongest or you're not. The rock is the rock, and the weight is the weight. Or if we're all trying to, if there's 100 of us and we're trying to lift the weight, it's usually going to come down to about a handful of guys, more realistically about 3 or so. And like you said, they give their all because they want to marry this woman and she's the prettiest woman they're ever going to see. And either you can win her over or you can't. Let's just say she's already interested in 100 guys and she just wants to see who's the strongest, and just for the sake of offspring, she wants a strong son. I don't know. Let's just make something up, which probably did happen. Um, Either you can lift it up off the ground, which is dead weight, or you can't. And if anybody that's ever had to move somebody if they're unconscious or passed away, whatever, I had to do it with my mom. She passed away, God rest herself. A lot of people are not, well, anybody that's not into weightlifting or competing on any level, and I don't mean like 50 pounds. I don't mean like this thing of litter, it's like 20 pounds, or how much is this? Yes, 20 pounds, exactly 20 pounds. I don't mean that. And you lift up those two and oh, it's so heavy. Well, I weigh 210 pounds, and if I was whatever, and you try to pick me up off the ground, couldn't. I'm talking about men. I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to a woman's strength. There are women that are very strong, like China, you know. Uh, but she's the exception, not the rule. And then there's plenty of strong women out there. Beth Phoenix, Nicole Bass, uh, Kong. There are, and I don't mean just because they're big or you think they're fat. I mean they're legit strong. Ronda Rousey, she could that man carry Triple H, and he's a big dude. I've seen Mark Henry in person. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm related to Muhammad Ali through marriage, and that's just a part of Kentucky thing. But the point being is that I would go all over Louisville, and I was with my uncle at that time. Not my uncle Ali or Uncle Rock, but my uncle Chris, my mom's brother. I have Uncle Tony, Uncle Chris, my mom's two brothers. But we were at an Indian restaurant, and I turned my shoulder. And I can tell from looking at you, Mitchell, that you're a big dude too. But a lot of people, unless you've seen a really big man in person, pause. Unless you've legit seen a really big man in person, um, people people they don't really understand how strong y'all really are. Um, Even seeing Kelsey and Hafthor or Eddie and can't remember her name. I'm sorry, Eddie Hall's wife or Brian and his wife. It doesn't like let me show you kind of what I mean. This is a little bit unfair only because of the height difference. I didn't see this picture. I've never seen this picture before. I don't mind the height necessarily, but I'm talking about the mass. The height's irrelevant necessarily. I'm talking about the mass, the broadness. That's where Eddie's static strength comes from. I'll see that. I'm still need to tall it is. There we go. So don't mind the height necessarily, but look at the broadness. Now I can legit say that Mark's broadness, like I turned a corner and he was directly behind me. Like the back of our seats were like facing each other. And I turned a corner and I've never seen a man with such broad shoulders. So when you see him do the clean and jerk, what you're talking about, he pressed it another 2 or 3 times just because. Yeah, this is what you're talking about. He just lifted it from the standing position. He lifted it right up. I'm not talking about the Olympics. This right here. Respect the bar. I've been watching a bunch of WWE, WWF. That's Bill Kazmaier right there on the left. Can y'all see? I don't know if y'all can see my mouse thing. That's Zadrunas right there. That's Bill Kazmaier. There's the heaviest lift of all time. Um, like these pictures are not. They're not. I think Mark's shoulders are broader than Shaq's. It looks like. So, um, kind of getting off track here, not really. Yeah, that's exactly how Mark. I saw Mark. I turned my shoulder. I turned the corner, I don't know why, but I turned and I seen them. And Mark is 6'4", my dad was 6'4". I got a picture of my dad. Hold on a second, I think I do. I want to show y'all. My dad would be considered like a giant man back in the day. Oh, there's my pictures of my family. That's my granny in the middle. That's me when I was fat. My sister, my aunties, my uncle. There's Rock and Muhammad right there, so y'all know I'm not lying. See me and my granny right there? That's me, obviously. That's Rock, Muhammad's brother. Rock right there with a feather cap. That's my mom. That's my sister, Jade's mom, Binky. See the resemblance? My sister in the middle. Her mama. There's Lonnie right there. Uncle Muhammad's wife, now widow. Not to get too off topic, but shout out to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Lion's my favorite animal. I was having a breakdown today, y'all, and I got my shirt right here. I'm just like in hell in my mind. Got a lot of like serious stuff going on, like real serious, as serious as it gets. Show y'all how God works. So I looked, and the only part of my shirt that was showing was the 360, and I don't mean stone cold. So literally, my shirt was crumpled up, and I just so happened to look, and it said 316. This is my favorite shirt. So, anyway, I'm gonna stop preaching. I always end up preaching in all of my videos. This is how I have to go coordinate. But anyway, wait a minute. Picture my dad. Really weird. Let me go to my Instagram and then John him on there. Hold on. Oh, I guess. Please don't ask me to sign in. Oh my gosh. Why is this thing so stupid? Alright. Anyways, I can't find it. So my dad is 6'4". And he makes Mark Henry, Mark Henry makes my dad look small. But the point is that um, the record is, I think, 1,105 pounds with Hafthor. I'll look it up in a second. But he picked up Big Show and World's Strongest slammed him. Trying to get a good angle. What's a standing position, horizontal slam? But trust me, if Mark were to slam the average person, you would die. It would like break your back. But that's it. That's a 500 plus pound man, and that's before Big Show lost weight. Because I think Vince said that he was too fat or something like that, and Big Show was like, "All right, I'm about to." Now you look at even the Big Show. Mark's shoulders are almost broader than the Big Show's, or just as, and that's a legit 7-foot man. But look at Andre the Giant. And I'll get back to the video. I just want y'all to understand the context. I go deep in my videos. Look at Andre in his prime. Now look at Wilt and Shaq. Look at that. Wilt's shoulders look like a child's compared to Mark's. So does Arnold's. So it basically takes a 7-foot giant to compare to Mark. And then let's look at you. Get you with your shirt off. Wait a minute, is that you? Oh my gosh. Yo, you're like Skeletor like me with my Crohn's. When I'm like 175, 185, and you went from that to a monster. My man. Respect. That's what I'm saying. Either you're strong enough mentally, forget about the strong man's about the mental part. These people don't take days off 24/7, even when they're asleep. Everything is on a regimen. Either you're strong enough to lift that or you're not. Yeah, see, very broad shoulders, just like Eddie. Very similar. Not like, I'm just saying the body. I'm not talking about the performance. Obviously, y'all are your own. So you're talking about dead weight when it comes to deadlift, which to me is the biggest indicator of strength. Because that's what people do is they go in the gym. Everybody, only thing people care about when it comes to the gym anywhere is how much can you deadlift, or can you pick that up? If you don't know what deadlift is, can you pick that up? Especially if you're trying to impress a chick. It all comes back to the women. We're trying to find a wife out here, man. Forget some likes. We're trying to find a wife. Either you can pick it up and pick her up too, or you can't. Is my mic on? Okay, thank God. All right. But the point is unless you see these people in person, you don't really understand how strong these guys, these men and women really are. Well, let's get to the video, and I'll talk intermittently here at times. I hope I don't get copyright on this. Let's go for it.
Fitness has put together their top 10 list of strength athletes all time, and they call this. Muscle and Fitness has put together their top 10 list of strength athletes all time, and they call this a definitive list. And I'm here to say there is no way that this is definitive. Let's go over the top 10. Some they got right, some they got wrong. At the end, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the people that they left out and who should have been mentioned. Now, let's kick off this list. It is a very obvious start with Brian Shaw. He is a 4 times world's strongest man, maximum deadlift of 467 kilos. That's around 1,025 pounds, and this is raw. Among many other feats of strength. Not only did Brian Shaw achieve amazing feats of strength and prove many times over he was the strongest man in the world, he went up against arguably the best strength athlete of all time in Zydrunas Savickas, and he came out on top many times. He also did this over a career that lasted a very long time. There is no way to discount Brian Shaw from any top 10 list. And for number 10 on the list, now I'm assuming that these are not in order. Actually, no, sorry. They said they were in order. Ranking Brian Shaw at 10 feels extremely low compared to what I would expect him to be. But at number 10, definitely a deserving participant on the list, Brian Shaw. At number 9 is someone that I had actually never heard of before, whose name is Leonid Taranenko, who maybe I should have known this name because he did perform some absolutely incredible feats of strength. All the way back in 19...
So with all due respect, those guys are not Bruce Lee, just straight up. Meaning that they didn't have things that were so just ahead of the times that they could compare to now. So it's the same thing, like he said, if you put all the strong men that have ever lived from every era that are legit as strong as each other, or it can be if they push each other. Let's say everybody pushes each other to the max. Um, I'll tell you who I believe. I almost slipped up. I'll say it for him, but I'll tell you who I believe it is that would win most of the time, if not all the time. They just don't belong on this list, with all due respect.
1998 in the 110 kilo weightlifting class. That's around 230 pounds, a little more, but this is not the heavyweight division. This is not the open division where we talk about guys like Lasha. He performed a 266 kilo clean and jerk and a 475 kilo weightlifting total in the 1998 World Championships. Now, these are incredible lifts for sure, but to me, if we're talking about strongest people of all time, I don't know why we're putting parameters of how large they were, or what era they competed in. This might hurt some feelings, but to me, strong is strong. Whether you competed last week or 100 years ago, the weight is the weight, and there really shouldn't be a whole lot of grace given to any sort of caveats. Then we should start talking about people like John Hack, who pound for pound is probably the strongest person in terms of powerlifting of all time. But people have lifted bigger weights, so how could he be the strongest person of all time? Now, the reason I say that this isn't the best ever is because Lasha has done a 267 kilo clean and jerk, 1 kilo heavier than Leonid, and his total is 492 kilos, which he hit in 2021. This is 17 kilos higher than Leonid's total. So I don't see how someone who lifted less weight could be higher on the list. I'll give you a little surprise. Lasha doesn't appear on this list at all. I have no idea how, but I'm going to tell you him among others who I think have missed out on this list. But they had Leonid at number 9. At number 8 is a legend from the UK named Andy Bolton. Now, he is a iconic powerlifter and one that a lot of British strongmen that I'm friends with look up to in very high regard. Now, he did a 964-pound raw deadlift, and he did a lot of his competing in multiply, which is a suit that helps you. It basically restricts the movement you're trying to do so that the weight pushes you down, and it adds weight to what you would be able to do. Now, in multiply equipment, he squatted over 1,200 pounds, which is absolutely insane. And his total of 2806 is number 6 of all time. Now, he dreamed of hitting 3,000 pounds in his powerlifting total. This is a feat that was later completed by two guys, powerlifting legends, Donnie Thompson and Dave Hoff, both not on this list. Now, Andy Bolton is an absolutely incredible athlete and was ahead of his time in a lot of ways, but I don't see how he could be ahead on the list when guys have exceeded his total by 200 pounds later on. Now, number 7 is Brian Siders. Brian Siders is another name that I had not heard of before. He has a single ply total of 2,651 pounds. Now, single ply is just a less supportive version of what Andy Bolton was wearing, and his total of 2,651 pounds is number 5 of all time. And with this, he did a over 1,000 pound squat, 800 pound bench press, and 832 pound deadlift. Now, Brian is on this list, but Blaine Sumner is not. Blaine Sumner with a 2,857 pound total, 200 pounds more than Brian Siders. Now, this was 11 years later, so again, Brian Siders, for his time, was absolutely incredible, but he has been surpassed by people who are more recent. I don't believe Brian Siders should be on this list. Hats off to him. Amazing, amazing feats of strength, but I don't see how people have lifted more, and he's included above them. Next up is a very famous historical strength figure. Again, I might hurt some feelings with this one, but this is Louis Uni, better known as Apollon the Mighty. Now, he's responsible for Apollon's wheels, which we still use a version of today. Now, these were made in late 1900s, late 1890s. And he had these 366-pound wheels manufactured, and as part of a show, he would lift them from the ground over his head. These have since been replaced with a heavier set of wheels, which, depending on the competition, it's over 400 pounds. It's a very famous Arnold Strongman Classic contest. I actually have one of the world records in this by lifting the 405-pound version of these wheels over my head 5 times. Now, Apollon the Mighty, lifting 300.
So when you're talking about strongest of all time, um, like what he was just saying, there's just certain things that we know that the only way you can know if someone has the right to be on this list is if, well, I can lift it, so I know everybody else can lift it. So we're really, as spectators, we're really completely ignorant. We're just, from a competition standpoint, from a literal standpoint of, we're just a spectator, but we don't know that it takes a lifetime for these guys to be able to even do this. And so that's why World's Strongest Man has the prestige, and once you have that title, you can propel your career to other things and more opportunities, like they all do, deservingly so. Just like Mr. Olympia, but which is the same as strongman when it comes to the prestige, just the principle. I'm not talking about the strong bodybuilders who are as strong as, like Ronnie Coleman is as strong as, or Arnold's as strong as Mitchell, because they're not. But I'm just saying that some bodybuilders like Ronnie are very strong, and even Arnold to a point. But that's as far as that goes. But I'm just saying that World's Strongest Man is important because you have to qualify to get there, and it's the strongest man in the world, literally. And then Arnold Strongman Classic is the heaviest. I think it's Rogue, and then Arnold, and then World's Strongest Man. And I think in between that is Europe's Strongest Man, Britain, and then respectively America's Strongest Man. But the main two are Arnold Strongman Classic is the heaviest and the hardest because it is the heaviest. And then the World's Strongest Man is second to Arnold Strongman. So if you're gonna say that if you can't win one of those, at least one of each of those, you don't belong on this list from a modern day standpoint.
166 pounds over.
Oh, and some of the strongest, for the most part, except maybe 2 or 3 guys that they usually have to have to fill the slot. No disrespect. They're definitely not anywhere near this top 10 strongest, but they're still strongest in the world at that time. But now the other 7 have an argument to be on this list.
His head one time versus myself, 400 pounds 5 times. I don't see how he could be above me on this list. We can make arguments to the nth degree on what kind of belts and what kind of chalk, but all we can do is what has actually been done, not what possibly could have been done if apparatus was the same. Again, a very, very important figure of strength, but to say he is one of the strongest of all time.
Yeah, so just like what if Shaq actually conditioned himself and tried and wasn't lazy? How many more championships could he have won? He won 4, maybe he could have won 10. Or what if him and Kobe played together and they didn't argue? The Eagles were aside and Phil Jackson stayed and Shaq was in shape. That doesn't matter because it didn't happen, and that's what he's
time. To say he is stronger than Andy Bolton and Brian Shaw makes very, very little sense to me. Next up is a strongman, Vasyl Virastyuk, and he is the only person to win IFSA and World's Strongest Man. Back about 15, 20 years ago, World's Strongest Man had a competitor come in called IFSA. IFSA stole a lot of the best athletes, and World's Strongest Man continued on. This is when Mariusz Pudzianowski won a lot of his World's Strongest Man titles, and someone like Zydrunas Savickas won a couple of IFSA titles. Now, Vasyl is the only person to win both IFSA and World's Strongest Man, of course, other than Big Z. Now, he had a max log of 200 kilos, a max axe of 185 kilos, a max deadlift of 330 kilos, a max hammer tire of 401 kilos, which it's possible that he just wasn't pushed to his limit on these events. But again, all we can go off is what has actually been done. To give some frame of reference, I'll use myself as an example, and I don't believe I belong anywhere on this top 10 list. Even though I have won World's Strongest Man, there's a long way to go between what I've accomplished and being a top 10 strength athlete of all time, in my opinion. His max log is 200 kilos. I have done 213 kilos. His max axle is 185 kilos. My max axle is 217 kilos. His max deadlift is 330. I have done 475. His max hammer tire is 401. I have also done 475. So they're not even close to the numbers that the guys are doing today. Amazing strength athlete, some amazing accomplishments, but definitely a high level of confusion for me on how he is ranked above Andy Bolton, Brian Shaw, and all of the other names that I've listed above. I don't know where this comes from. To be honest, I might be ignorant, but everything that I look up on Vasyl from good, reputable sources over on Strongman Archives, I can't find lifts or results that would indicate that he is one of the best top 5 strongest people of all time. Number 4 is probably the most iconic strength athlete, or at least one of them. His name is Paul Anderson. He was the 1956 Olympic weightlifting champion, and this was with a total of 805 pounds. This was back in the day where they also did the strict press along with the clean and jerk and the snatch. So I've removed that and only talked about the 2 lifts that are also done today. This is 280 pounds shy of the current world record. Now, Paul Anderson in 1956 was absolutely in a league of his own. Who knows what could have happened if he was pushed to his limit by someone like Lasha. But the fact is he wasn't. And his total sits at 805 pounds. Again, 280 pounds shy of the current world record. The one thing that Paul Anderson did do, and he did some other unique feats of strength that have added to the folklore and added to the legend of himself, the 6,270 pound backlift. This was done on Strongest Man in History by Brian Shaw, Eddie Hall, Nick Best, and Robert Oberst on the History Channel. They attempted this, and I believe a couple of them actually exceeded this weight. But this is something that we don't really do, and I have no idea what a huge backlift would be, but 6,270 pounds is something that I just don't think I would even bother to attempt because I would worry too much about what might happen to my body. So, on one hand, 280 pounds shy of current world record in weightlifting tells me he is nowhere near this list. But a 6,270 pound backlift, I don't know. Maybe he does belong in this list. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Now, the next 3 are very legitimate cases, in my opinion. They say these are the top 3 of all time. Number 3 is Bill Kazmaier. He was both a powerlifter and a strongman. In powerlifting, he had a...
So, actually, okay. The same thing that happened to Bill actually happened to me with Bill. I used to be one of the top players. My name was Malcolm Xavier. Just so you know. I'm on right here. I have my name. I had a name change. Malcolm. And I went undefeated at the card shop because you had to play in card shops to get points to go to the regional. Same thing as strongman. And so the owner came to me and said, "Hey, can you stop winning and let somebody else win?" Which I don't even know if I think I probably did out of just pity. But I was literally too good for other people, and there was nobody that could beat me. So, and I played against people of all ages, but like who knows how many? Like I had the Millennium Puzzle Trophy with my name on it. I've lost it unfortunately, but I had it. Anybody that knows me from back then could tell you. But the point is the same thing that happened to Bill happened to me, which is totally unfair and biased. I've never heard of that happening ever before outside of me and Bill. But the fact that he's still on here just shows you that how strong he is or was. So yeah, that's 100% accurate, undisputable.
2,425 pound total in single ply. At that time, this was incredible. This currently stands as the 54th best total of all time. In strongman, he was a 3-time World's Strongest Man champion before being kicked out for being too dominant. He won in 1980, 81, 82, and in 83, he simply wasn't invited back because in those days, it was purely a TV show, and he just was way too dominant that if he turned up, there was no TV show to be had because he would go out and win virtually everything. To talk about his best lifts ever, he had a 415 kilo deadlift, a 440 kilo squat, 170 kilo log press. These numbers, again, for his time, absolutely incredible, but the best deadlift in history right now is 86 kilos heavier than his deadlift. His 440 kilo squat falls a little bit shy of the numerous 1,000-pound squatters that we have, which is 453.5 kilos, and his 170 kilo log press would be beaten by virtually every pro strongman on the circuit at the moment, where the world record sits at 230 kilos by Iron Bibby. I had the privilege to watch that in person in Glasgow at an event last year. Now, does Bill belong on this list? I think for his time, absolutely. He was the best strength athlete that existed on the planet at that time. For all time, the numbers are simply lower than they are for other people. So this is where I'm really split. If he was pushed, could he have done bigger numbers? I believe yes. But he wasn't pushed. So how can we say he definitely would have done X, Y, and Z based on the equipment or based on whatever? You know, if we look at every athlete in every sport, over time, they tend to get better. This is not a disrespect to people who existed before because they were stepping stones, whether mentally proving that things were possible or physically showing people that things could be done. But they have been exceeded, whether it's sprinting or marathon running or weightlifting or powerlifting or strongman. These numbers, they have been beat. So with Bill, I'm a little bit 50-50 because he was so successful at winning multiple world championships. But if I hold it to the same standard as someone like Paul Anderson, as Apollon the Mighty, as Andy Bolton, as Brian Siders, what they've done based on what's been done all time, it doesn't fit for me on the top 10 list. I will tell you who I do believe should be on the top 10 list in a moment. Number 2 was Mark Henry. Now, Mark is, first of all, an absolutely incredible person, incredibly smart, not only strong from knowing him, but Mark was the only person of all time to be the U.S. powerlifting and the U.S. weightlifting champion at the same time. He is also a WWE superstar. That's how most people would know Mark Henry, but he is an absolutely 100% legitimate strength athlete. He had a 2,337 pound powerlifting total.
All right, so like if Hulk Hogan was to say he's one of the strongest men in the world, that's why he never said it, because it would be bad for his brand. Um, and maybe he does or doesn't say things that are questionable as far as truths and things that are not true. But that's because he knows he isn't, and that's a huge thing that I'm a diehard wrestling fan, and I watched Mark's World Strongest or his Arnold thing. I've been into all of this from jump. So not only am I somebody that has the live perspective, and I'm not biased, because if Mark did absolute trash in it, then I'd be like, why the hell is he on this list? He's also the first man to ever lift the Thomas inch dumbbell, which he tried to lift it 1 year, he couldn't. He said, give me a year and I'll lift it up, and then he did. You can look that up. And then since then, I think about 5 other guys have lifted it up. Um, I think Brian Shaw might have had a new one that he made in his gym just to test the waters. But it's a very short list of people that actually lifted it. So that just tells you that, like, that's a true feat of strength that not most people can like claim to. So the fact that he's actually given Mark his due credit is just solidifies my respect for Mitchell. A lot of people think, oh, it's wrestling, it's fake. Well, that's actually not fake. Ironically, that's 100% real. If you don't know, that's exactly correct in that aspect. And then his Olympic and his powerlifting thing too, also.
This does have him down at 259th of all time. I think when we talk about dominant athletes for their time with the competition that they had, Mark Henry was not to be matched. But it was well back before some equipment advancements, some just advancements in us knowing what the human body can do. Mark also competed naturally, which is something that I'm not talking about a whole lot in this list because I don't know for most of these guys. But with Mark, he is very, very open and adamant that he did all of his lifting drug-free, which takes all of his accomplishments certainly.
If you go back, and also Mark has the best history of any athlete, like just like Mike Tyson, he had some people take him in. I think he had a family tragedy. I don't want to speak on who it was because I don't know. I don't want to be ignorant and misspeak on somebody if they're still living, but I think he had a family tragedy that altered his life, and then he ended up um, living with his family from like Iceland or something like that, or Greenland. They took him in, um, basically was like, hey, give me a chance and I won't let you down. And then that's when he wound up in the competitions, Olympic and powerlifting officially. And then I guess just because he felt like it, he decided to do. He did the Arnold in the midst of wrestling, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, but then he didn't get into anything further because he was wrestling. And at that time, they were making like really good money, so I would have done that too, for his family and finances part of it. So don't really throw shade on Mark because he didn't keep it going. He had a legit reason, but at the same time, he still proved. Like nobody in the competition does the axle press 2 or 3 extra times just because. Like he said, put it back down. I'm gonna lift it back up. It wasn't even necessary. You're supposed to do it once. He did it like 2 or 3 more times. But it's the way he did it too. Like he straight depot did a joint. Respect the bar.
Certainly up a notch with what he was just able to do naturally. There are also, with a lot of guys on this list, and Mark in particular, there's some things that he could do that just no one would even think of doing. Let's take the Apollon's wheels, for example. For him, or for most people, you clean it to your stomach, you flip it up, and then you press. But Mark took the wheels the first time they were there and cleaned them straight to his shoulders and then pressed them overhead like it was absolutely nothing. These were the 166 kilo version of the original Apollon's wheels. But compared to everyone else in the competition, it was absolutely absurd. I encourage you to go check out that video. Mark Henry, Apollon wheels. Maybe one of the coolest feats of strength of all time, just to absolutely manhandle a piece of equipment that had really never been done in modern history. The Arnold brings it back, and he makes it his baby. Number one on this list, 100% deserving, I believe.
So when's the last time that you heard a strong man talk about another strong man saying that something was totally absurd? Just think about what he's really saying, right? Like think about the context he's really given and the credence that he's given to. He said that might have been the greatest feat of strength of all time. Um, Between that and Thor's lift, because Thor didn't just lift the weight, he held it. Now Eddie did too, but the only difference is that it was just heavier. That's the only difference. So if it's heavier, it's heavier. Like if you got more money in your bank account, it means more. Why? Because a million versus a billion, that's a huge difference. You know what I'm saying? Like bigger is better when it comes to the numbers in bodybuilding because that's everything.
Also to be the number one, if we're looking at all time, there are a couple of people who I think contest him, we'll talk about in a second. But just in terms of pedigree, he is not to be touched. This is Big Z. He had 4 World's Strongest Man, 2 IFSA championships, the organization that I spoke about before, 8 Arnold Strongman Classic championships, 70 plus world records, some of which still stand today. He had every shoulder press record you could imagine. And frankly, he probably could have done more if he was pushed to his absolute limit. And he is someone who deserves all of the respect in the world in the strongman scene, in the strength sports scene. He is the best strength athlete of all time, in my opinion, in terms of pedigree, in terms of actual lifts. Let's talk about some people who might usurp him. There's one man who I believe to be the strongest person who ever lived in a particular year. This year was 2018, and this was Hafthor Bjornsson, standing at 6'8", 440 plus.
My name is Hafthor. Hafthor Julius Bjornsson. Subscribe to my Twitch. I can't talk like Arthur, but I can say Twitch. I agree 100%, Mitchel. But not only did he go cruise control, but he went beast mode and broke records and just like I mean, total domination of everybody, of the strongest people in the world. Not just you can dominate a competition, but I think y'all be forgetting when they say the best in the world. Just like Michael Jordan, he was Michael Jordan for that whole 2018. And then just to prove a more better point, he went and did the deadlift, and he said he would. A sidebar, he said he would beat Eddie in the boxing match, and he did. So like everything Hafthor says he's going to do, he does. And then the box squat ain't even like I box squat at 450 when I was like 14 or 15 or 6. Like I was 14, 15, or 16 with no squatter just because I just threw it on there and did it, and I knew I could do it because I got static strength. Because I'm built proportional. See, I'm built proportional. So like when I come down, I have this right here and this. I know my own abilities. That's why he said, um, comparatively speaking, he doesn't belong on this list because he knows that he hasn't been pushed to his limit yet. So he can't be considered in the top 10 if he hasn't been pushed to his limit. And then once he's done, then you can look at it. I think he has a potential to get up there. I mean, I really do. Um, because Mitchell dominated things too, and that's why he won is because he was dominant. Um, he reminds me of Big Z in a lot of ways. Big Z's got the conditioning, he's got the consistency, he's got the build, the brute strength. Hafthor has that too. It's just Hafthor is bigger. But I agree 100% as far as pedigree goes. I can't argue Big Z number one overall. He's accomplished more than anybody, so how could he not be? That's a 100% valid argument. Um, it's kind of like Stone Cold, The Undertaker, and Ric Flair. Um, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Rock. I can see the point for all of them. And you would have a legit conversation, a legit argument. Um, but like, am I going to put my money on Bruce Lee or John Jones? I'm putting my money on Bruce Lee every time. Am I putting my money on LeBron or MJ? And put my money on MJ just because they've proven that what they can do in their peak, there's nobody touching them. And it's not like a matter of opinion, it's a matter of results. Like the numbers are the numbers. Because when it really matters, you either got that clutch gene or you don't. You either got that mental fortitude or you don't. Um, but if you're talking about old strength from the ancestors and all that, um, I think he's Lithuanian. I think, if I'm wrong, correct me. But Jonas is. But no disrespect to his ancestors, but Thor's just got that Viking power, man. He's got that Viking strength, and it obviously shows. And all the numbers aside and all that, if you're talking about who's the strongest literally to ever live, it's definitely Hafthor, my opinion. In my opinion, Hafthor, Julius Bjornsson. Shout out to Stormyor, Kelsey, and his daughter. Shout out to the Bjornsson. Shout out to his daddy that's like 7 feet tall, his granddaddy. Shout out to everybody, man. Shout out to you. Shout out to Mitchell. Shout out to the shout out to the world, man. Love y'all.
Pounds. He has the deadlift world record at 501 kilos. He has lifted more weight from the ground to his waist than anyone in history. He has squatted 1,000 pounds, albeit not to depth, but a 6'8" man squatting 1,000 pounds, and he didn't do it at 100% maximum effort. I'm sure he could have gone a little bit deeper and hit that with powerlifting depth. He has won every strongman competition that he has competed in terms of he has won World's Strongest Man before, he has won the Arnold Strongman Classic before, and in his day, in 2018, he is absolutely untouchable in terms of the best all-around strength athlete. If I had to put one person out to compete against any other person in history, 2018 Thor is my guy. Does that put him above Big Z in terms of best person of all time? Well, I think Prime Z, Prime Thor, who wins, depends on the competition, but I think more times than not, Hafthor would win if it was 2018 Hafthor. Now, this is a toss-up, but I believe 1-2 is Hafthor and Big Z. Another big strongman who deserves mentioning is Eddie Hall, who lifted 500 kilos in the deadlift, and this was a world record by 36 kilos, 37 kilos on the day. It wasn't even fathomable that someone could lift 500 kilos off the ground, and Eddie did that under strongman conditions, which is absolutely incredible. He also had the Axel world record at 216 kilos, very, very narrowly missed a 230 kilo log press, and I believe there's not really a question that he was the strongest static strongman of all time. Now, to talk about some other names. First of all, I talked about Lasha. He is the number one weightlifter of all time in terms of total. How he is not the number one person in terms of weightlifting, he needs to be top 10 strength athlete of all time. 492 kilogram total, a two-time gold medalist. Now, that 492 kilo total is a world record. So is the clean and jerk individually, and so is the snatch individually. There's no one in history who's done a bigger clean and jerk or a bigger snatch. Obviously, that would equate to the biggest total of all time. Now, he also has every world title and every Olympic gold medal in heavyweight weightlifting for men since 2015. This is 8+ years, a streak that is still going, and this is before he competes at the 2024 Paris Olympics, where he is the odds-on favorite to win yet another gold medal. I think he's coming to the end of his career, but hopefully we get to see a few more incredible feats of strength from Lasha. He would be on my list for sure. Next up, Blaine Sumner would be on my top 10 list. He is the number one equipped powerlifter of all time when it comes to single ply. He has done a 2,857 total, an 1,185 pound squat, and a 939 pound bench. His squat and his bench are both number 2 of all time. To have one guy have the second best squat of all time and second best bench of all time when you have people dedicate all of their training just to those lifts is absolutely mind-blowing. Blaine Sumner would definitely be on my list. Next up is Dan Bell, who would be on my list with an 1,102 pound squat and a 2,606 total. This is with raw plus reps. Okay, so this is number one for raw plus reps of all time, meaning no supportive equipment other than wrapping his knees on squat. Arguably for safety, it does help you lift a little bit more weight. Otherwise, bench press, normal setup, no sleeves on the elbows, just wrist wraps, and your might, and you're good to go. And deadlift, no deadlift suit, no straps, just hold on to the bar and pull. Dan Bell, number one raw plus reps of all time, he would be on my list. Next up, Jesus Oliveira, the number one raw tested powerlifter of all time, and the number one raw untested powerlifter of all time. He competes in a tested federation, but no one untested has beat him either. This is with a 1,036 pound raw squat. This is only in sleeves. Standard knee sleeves that you would see coming into the gym. Absolutely mind-blowing. And he's done a 600-pound bench, a 900 deadlift for a 2451 total. If we compare that to someone like Dan Bell, who's done it done raw plus reps, not tested, well, he is only about 60 pounds off of that. If you put reps on your knees, that's going to add more than 60 pounds. Never mind performance enhancement. So Jesus Oliveira, phenomenal strength athlete and deserves to be on this list. So that is my thoughts. I would love to know what you guys think. Who do you agree with on that top 10 list? Do you agree with my replacements for some of those people? And do you think the historic strongman figures should be recognized? If they are, there are two historic figures who should be spoken about. One Canadian man who was Louis Cyr, and two, Eugene Sandow. If we're recognizing historical strength figures, they should be right beside Apollon the Mighty and the other historical amazing strength athletes who we have built our careers off the back of. The air conditioning is broken in my home in the guest wing where I record this video. Excuse the profuse amount of sweat, but strength sports get me excited. Let me know what you think. Who would be in your top 10 list? Do you think I have it right with my replacements, or do you think we should give respect to people who we have built these sports off of? Let me know in the comments. As per usual, lift heavy, be kind. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you next time.
But yeah, that's it. And if you want to know my top 10, I can make that list, but this video is long enough as it is. If you want to support the channel, all the stuff's there, links in the description. That's it. I'm out.